Welcome to our project today, and what we're going to do is build and start up the early Miata, the 90 through 93 Mazda Miata engine, the 1600cc. Now I've prepared the block already, so it's honed and cleaned. Now one of the first things we're going to need to do is actually check how clean is this block, and I have to oil it. So my first step is I'm going to put a little oil right here in the fingers. Put them in each cylinder. Got to oil these walls up. Kind of like oiling that turkey. We're going to be oiling our turkeys here pretty quick. Basting our turkey, so I'm basting this block right here. Now it was clean and dry. Now to see how clean this block actually is, what you do is you take a white towel and see how clean you got it. And we're going to make a wipe on the inside. And how clean is it? Well, it's pretty clean. Because I've cleaned a lot of them, and it's clean. It's yellow oily. Now when this engine came apart, we marked all these rods. You actually, when you take them apart, you mark the rods. I use a pin punch, and I'll put, like, this is number 3, so I have 3 dots on the cap and the rod, so I know which one's which, so you don't mix them up. One thing about engines, when you put them together, you always have the tang where the bearing goes, tang to tang. So it goes that way. So the first thing we're going to have to do is actually, we've got the rings here, the new ring set. One of the things you have to check on it is the ring clearance. I'm going to have all 3 rings. The bottom ring, the ring on the bottom of the piston, is called the oil control ring. And what it does is bring the oil, so as it comes down, scrapes the oil and puts it back inside the piston and dumps it into the engine. The next ring up is called the oil scraper, and the top ring is called the compression ring. That's the ring that does the job when the compression happens, so it's the seal. The compression ring's job is actually to spread open and seal it as it comes down. The other 2 rings control the oil surface as it comes down. So what's important with the rings is that if the gap, you can see the gap in the rings, if the gap is too small, as it warms up, it'll start to touch. As it touches, if it touches, it'll start to expand and then seize up the engine. So you have to have, I think it's 4 thousandths per inch of diameter of the cylinder. So what I'm going to do is set it in here, and I'm going to take a look and see how much gap I have. Looks like I got about 10 thousandths. And this is the oil scraper. And here's the oil control ring. Now there's an up and down to the rings too, top and bottom. And that ring looks like I got about 4 to 6 thousandths on it. Here's my top ring, the compression ring. Looks like I got about 8 thousandths on that one. So now what I need to do is actually put the rings onto the piston. To oil the piston, I'm just going to oil it like this. I'm going to put the oil on the top and just rub it around. Got to oil this baby up.
So take these out of here, right?
Yeah. And I need one of those expanders. That's that the gold colored part.
All right.
They call this the expander. It holds these oil scraper rings. There you go. There's a way to these. Down goes on the piston. There's 3 parts to the oil control ring.
What's the expander actually going to do for you?
The expander holds these thin rings out up against the cylinder wall, so that's why they call it the expander. Now there's a certain place it goes in. It can't go at the joint, but it goes about maybe 20 millimeters away from the actual union of the expander. Okay, Ed, I need one more of those thin rings on the bottom. No, one of those. There you go. Thanks, Ed. So one went over here. Here's our joint. Now I'm going to move it over here. And we're going to put them all together like that. So now I need to separate it.
With one of these bigger ones?
And I've got the next one here already, Ed. Now these have an up and down to them. There's a top and bottom. They're marked. Well, let's see if we can see the mark here. There's the top. You see, I'm doing this with my fingers. They make a tool to expand the rings, but these rings, this one is either up or down is okay. Doesn't have a direction to it.
What about the openings? Do you stagger the openings?
Yeah, let's talk about that. So now what I'm going to do is, we know that this one ring, the openings are right here. We don't want any openings at the pin or the skirt. So then they're right here, right here. And that actually, so any gas that would escape by would have to go through here, around, over here, and around, and so you stagger the rings. In actuality, when you put an engine together in the rings are always rotating. But hopefully they're rotating all the same.
Why not by the pin or the skirt?
The pin this is the thickest part of the piston. So this is the most expansion is right here. So what happens is an engine that overheats, okay, sticks in the bore right here at the pin. So I open an engine up that overheated, and the scraping, the problem is at the pin boss. If it's lack of oil, it's on the skirt. The skirt is scored up. So you can tell if an engine is overheated, scoring here, or a lack of oil on the skirt boss. So now we've got this piston together. So this piston is, looks like number 2.
This says 5.
There's 3. This must be 1. There's 1, 2, and that's 4. It's the little dots. When we take it apart, we dot them. So this is number 2. Cylinders are 1, 2, 3, 4. And if we look at the piston, the top of the piston, there's a dot on the top of the piston. The dot is toward the front of the engine. So this is the belt side. The belt side is always the front of the engine. So this is number 2. So we're going to put it in this hole. Now, one of the things that we haven't done yet, but when you go to
What am I looking at here?
right now, we got the ring compressor on it, and we're getting ready to put the piston. So this has actually got the rings tight against the piston so we can drive it into the block. So that's what this is right here. Now, before we put it in, I don't want to get ahead of myself. I've already checked the clearances on this, and this engine's good. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at one piston and see what kind of clearance do we have on this. So we're going to set the piston in this way. But to see what kind of clearance we have, we're going to take a long feeler gauge. I'm going to start out with a 2000. We'll put the 2000s gauge in against the skirt, which is the thickest part of the cold piston, and slide it in. 2000s. That's a nice tight piston. So let's try it with 3. Let's see if it'll take 3000s. Here's 3000s. They call for anywhere from 2 to 4,000. So here's 3. 3 still goes. Here's 4. Nope, won't take 4. So it's a tight 3, so it's a good engine, good fit. This is actually a Miata engine with over 100,000 miles on it, and there's very little wear.